Hello, everybody. I'm going to be talking about Roger Scruton's book, How to Think Seriously About the Planet: Case for Environmental Conservatism. And more specifically, I'll be going over a passage from his book. And yeah, let me get started. So, I'll give you some background, as his book is primarily about conservation. So, I'll just give a brief background on what that is. So, it's the practice of attempting to save the environment from species loss and the collapse of ecosystems worldwide. And it's vital to helping both animals and trees and this is important as they all depend on each other for our survival. And our environmental conservation can be interchanged with preservation, as there are often are, but there is a difference as conservation refers to responsible management of the environment and its resources. And preservation is more about keeping these resources away from human consumption and to preserve them, and and they should only be utilized as for their natural beauty and inspiration. That's more preservation. So there is a slight difference. Continuing. So why is it important? Well, there are a lot of environmental issues, hydrological issues, global warming, etc. Uh, Reducing air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, protecting the biodiversity. That's another one. And environmental conservation is the attempt to deal with these. Along with that, it's an attempt to facilitate conservation of natural resources for a few generations and saving our planet from harmful repercussions of global warming. Those are just another thing environmental conservation attempts to do. A few things. And what's the problem with environmental conservation? Well, it's not necessarily a problem with environmental conservation itself, it's rather the way it's viewed among different people, as there are some different agreements. More specifically, in the US and UK, this falls along political lines, which the political left, or those on the left of the political spectrum and those on the right of the political spectrum. And Roger Scruton details this in his book, How to Think Seriously About the Planet: A Case for Environmental Conservatism, as he attempts to offer conservation to those on the right of the political spectrum and make it appealing. Now, what are the differences in environmental conservation, the way they look at it? So, according to Scruton, on the left, it's much more looked at as a protest on behalf of poor and powerless among large corporations. And moreover, environmentalists today are aware of the ecological damage that revolutionary socialism has had on places like Soviet Union and China, as forced collectivization and frenzied industrialization led to a shift in populations and rivers and whole landscapes. Although they will recognize this, those who are environmentalists on the left, according to Scruton, they still believe it's part of the socialism is still part of the answer rather than the problem. Now, those on the right of the political spectrum, who done so as conservatives, hold the idea of individual freedom means economic freedom, which in turn means freedom to exploit natural resources for profit. And the example he gives is the timber merchant cutting down the rainforest, mining corporation that decapitates a mountain, the motor manufacturer turning out unending stream of cars, coal producer making putting out millions of plastic bottles, and they're all obeying the market, but if not checked, are destroying some parts of our shared inheritance, which is just, I guess, this is another word for just the overall environment. That's another way. That's the way he put it. Now, how the both these views flawed according to Scruton. So Scruton states that those on the left view conservatism as kind of a dirty word, in his words, as they don't see the semantic connection with conservation, and they view environmentalists, those on the left of the political spectrum, view conservatism as an ideology of free enterprise, which is which is assault on Earth's resources with no motive behind short-term gain. And those on the right are partly to blame for misconception, as they tend to see modern politics in a simple dichotomy between individual freedom and, on the other hand, the state. And he says it's plausible for a conservative to respond that economic it's plausible for a conservative to respond, therefore, not to advocate economic freedom at all costs, but to recognize the cost of economic freedom and reduce them. So, reducing the cost of economic freedom, exploiting natural products that are available. So that's how he explained it. Now, how to view environmental conservation as conservative. Now, Scruton, like I said in the passage, aims to persuade those on the political spectrum, on the right side of the political spectrum. And he makes the point that freedom is not the only point of politics, as conservatism, and conservation are two aspects of a single long-term policy. So they're linked. And he explains that he understands conservatism means the maintenance of social ecology, and that is true. That freedom is part of that ecology. Just without that ecology, social organisms cannot adapt. But to maintain but he says in order to maintain our social and ecological equilibrium, the goal should be to pass what we have on future generations while maintaining and enhancing the order in which we go about conducting ourselves and how that impacts the environment. That's not exactly what it says, but I'm paraphrasing. So, in conclusion, the passage attempts to persuade those on the political spectrum, the right side, and he also goes over the differences on those on the political right and political left and how they kind of have opposing views. And that's all I have, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.